In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
Imagine receiving a hysterical phone call from your college-bound daughter. 5 small purchases under $5 each have just triggered $195 in overdraft fees, $39 per transaction for what seemed like innocent mistakes. For Brenda Campbell, this became an opportunity to calmly help her daughter learn an invaluable financial lesson. In today's Money Tales episode, Brenda takes us from her childhood in a family of 7, where mac and cheese was stretched into soup to feed everyone, through her journey as the first in her family to attend college, to becoming Wisconsin's leading advocate for teen financial literacy. Her story reveals how well-timed money conversations, paired with financial literacy, can transform someone's entire financial future. Let me tell you more about Brenda. She is the president and CEO of SecureFutures, a nonprofit that she has led since its inception in 2006. Under Brenda's leadership, the organization has grown into a leading force for teen financial empowerment, impacting more than 126,000 teens and young adults through innovative programs and community partnerships.
Here are 3 key money topics Brenda hits on in this conversation. First, share your mistakes, not just your successes. The most engaging financial conversations happen when we're vulnerable about our missteps. Second, when it comes to financial literacy discussions, make them relevant to reality. Financial education sticks when it connects to what's happening right now in someone's life. And third, bridge the gap between personal financial knowledge and action with hands-on mentorship. Nothing helps solidify concepts better than having an accountability partner who can help you apply personal financial knowledge to your life in ways that will create lasting behavioral change. Now it's our pleasure to bring you Brenda Campbell's Money Tales.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager.
Sandy, I had an incredible experience last week. I was volunteering at the Girl Scout camp all week.
We talked about this before, about your training for that.
My training, I was begrudging giving up additional days, and now I'm humbled by the whole experience because I just volunteered for 1 week and a couple of days, and there's these women who do so much work to make this incredible camp happen. My story today is to share a money conversation I had in the shed, which is the assignment I got. I was part of the shed team.
What does the shed team do?
Well, Sandy, I imagined being off in no man's land. I laughed. I was like, oh, they put me in the shed. It's the epicenter of where all the different activities, they come get their pens, their fabric, their glue, their paint, and you're just moving. For my personality, I loved it and got to meet so many great kids and parents. But the money conversation I had was with a mom who was very experienced. She contributes a lot to Girl Scouts and was our go-to person at the shed. And we had a lull in our jobs and we were talking about our kids, and she shared how she handles money with her kids that I just thought was incredible. They're teenage, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. A couple of years ago, she and her husband decided that they would every week give them an allowance that's $10 for every year that they're alive. And she goes, that's a lot of money, but it's for everything. Now, I think food, not so much, but if you want to go to Starbucks, it's that. Your soaps, your lotions, your clothes, fixing your computer, fixing the phone, everything. It requires budgeting. And I was like, wow, that is so brilliant. I just have to share how it came about. She and her husband and family are foster parents. And 2 years ago, they brought in a later teen young girl, and she's part of her family. And this young girl didn't want to ask for anything, felt uncomfortable, didn't want to ask for money. And all of a sudden, this woman realized, oh my gosh, she needs stuff. So she didn't want to be at the center of this person having to come ask her for everything. And then she realized, even my kids, I have opinions. I don't think you should spend it on that Starbucks, but let them spend it, make those mistakes. And then when they want to go to the concert, they don't have any money. They got to figure it out.
That's very cool. Are they talking about money a lot as a family as a result?
Probably as a result, I think the conversations are a lot. She talked about one of the daughters is a saver and one's a spender, really talking about it in the dynamics of, oh, you're out of money. Well, the younger sister goes to the older sister who's super kind and lends her. And the mom's trying to decide, do I intervene? Do I let it happen?
What a great way for the family to learn about money.
Also, the shed was talking about money and how to talk with our kids about money.
Certainly not only providing the financial education, but also the agency to make decisions. That's really important.
The agency, and she talked about that, and also get herself out of that center of deciding what's right or wrong. Let them make those mistakes, and make those mistakes at a young age where the stakes are a little smaller.
I'm glad you got the shed assignment, Cammie. It sounds very fun and educational.
Me too, Sandy. It was a blast. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome our guest today, Brenda Campbell. Thank you for joining us on the Money Tales podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited about the conversation.
Would you please introduce yourself and share a couple pivotal moments that really impacted who you are today?
I'm Brenda Campbell. I lead an organization called SecureFutures. We're a nonprofit, I like to say a for-purpose organization focused on financial empowerment for teens. Our programming really helps teens, especially those who are coming from under-resourced communities, build financial capability and confidence through education and mentorship. I grew up in a big family where money was always pretty tight. My parents worked very hard and they were pretty careful with the limited resources that we had. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I did that with the help of scholarships and by qualifying for financial aid and grants. I would say my parents didn't talk about investing and really didn't talk about responsible use of credit. Accepting my position here at SecureFutures was pretty pivotal and played a major role in shaping who I am today. We started the organization back in 2006, and that was really because across the state of Wisconsin, so many kids were graduating without a clue how to manage money. When I met our founder, his name is Lloyd Levine, he had a 2-page proposal for the organization. And I remember reading that proposal and thinking, how might my life be different today if I had had financial education in high school? Once I saw how much young people were struggling with some of the same gaps that I had, it really lit a fire in me. And I became really passionate about financial empowerment, and especially about making sure that all students, no matter where they come from, get access to the knowledge and tools they need to succeed.
Well, you must have loved that story about the shed.
I did. I had a similar experience when my kids were in middle school. We used to do the back to school shopping, and I would have my budget for that. And I discovered if I just simply handed that money to my daughter instead of holding it myself, she really changed how she did her back to school shopping. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to the back of the store to the sale racks instead of to the front of the store. So I think it was the smartest thing I ever did.
Oh, that's incredible. What a great story. It's the same amount of money, just changes the accountability and the ownership of it. Incredible. You talked about this big family where money was always very tight. How'd you know you were stressed as a family financially?
I never went hungry and I always felt like I had what I needed, but through conversations, I would overhear my parents talking about decisions that they had to make about limited resources. While we didn't have a lot, they made it work. My mom was masterful at making food stretch for a large family. I remember her mac and cheese, it was turned into a soup that would feed 7 children. I know I had a savings account. I remember going to the bank with my birthday money. I earned a weekly allowance. Similar to in your story, I saved for the things I wanted. I bought my first banana seat bicycle. Things like eating in a restaurant was very, very rare and a super special occasion for us. Honestly, I can only recall one family vacation.
Brenda, growing up in that environment and being the first person to go to college sounds like a very intentional decision. Were there expectations that you would go to college, or how did that all come about?
I was a very strong student, and I think those conversations started pretty early. I knew that I wanted to go. I had some teachers that encouraged me to consider that as a path. I did some research about scholarships, and I knew that I would qualify for financial aid when that time came. Somehow my parents scraped up just a little bit of money to kind of launch me. But from then on, I was on my own. I even remember after my first year, I had to convince my parents to allow me to file independently, to claim independence from them, because that really helped me then to qualify for more aid.
This sounds like a crash course in money just right off the bat, trying to understand how all those systems work.
Absolutely. Something that I think I'm especially mindful of now in doing this programming at Secure Futures is we are working with students who don't have the same opportunity and the same resources. And so really helping them to make some of those decisions too in an informed way is something that we're very passionate about at Secure Futures.
Brenda, how did you figure it out? How did you even know to talk to your parents about creating you as an independent, or the terminology I'm not as familiar with, but how'd you know about it?
It was talking to someone at the financial aid office. Even then, you had to complete that FAFSA, right? The financial aid form. My parents had to help with that.
Which might as well be written in Greek, by the way. It's very difficult.
100%. But there's so many resources out there now to help students through that and to help parents through that. Here in Milwaukee, Milwaukee Public Schools does a lot to help parents better understand how to complete those forms. And even students who are undocumented, while they won't qualify for financial aid, they can qualify for university-based financial aid. So it's still worth their while to complete that form.
So you were getting this great personal financial education that you were investing in learning for yourself while you were in college. How did that impact what you were studying and what your plans were after you graduated? How are you thinking about money then?
It's funny because I went to college to become a lawyer and I came out a social worker. I just really feel like I was called to a helping profession. It's just who I am at my core and where my values align. I do believe that my purpose is to work with people who are coming from an under-resourced community and to really help them with empowerment. This path was meant for me. I was pretty good at seeking out knowledge, and I would say that's true here at Secure Futures too. When I came to this position 19 years ago, it was the first time I had led an organization, so I knew nothing about fundraising or developing a board, but I was so good at finding other people who had that talent and had that knowledge. And I think the same is true for money. I found people. I didn't come here to Secure Futures until I was in my early 40s, and that is where I learned the most about managing money. All of a sudden, a lot of our programming is delivered by volunteers from the business community. And the people who are drawn to this work, they're bankers and financial planners and investment professionals. We developed a curriculum that was designed to provide students with foundational financial concepts, budgeting, saving, understanding banking, understanding credit. And I will admit that a lot of what I learned in developing that curriculum and talking to volunteers who came with a strong background in financial management. I think that's still true today, too, is that a lot of adults don't understand how their credit score is calculated. A lot of us learned it by teaching it to students. And that was true for me too. While I understood a concept like compound interest, how important is it to understand compound interest when you're thinking about long term financial planning? But I think that was when I really embraced the idea that I need to be thinking more about my long term financial planning. So I was inspired by this organization as much as we inspire students. And that's where I really started to put some things in place. And in compound interest, the power comes from time. And by me waiting until I was in my early 30s, I mean, I had been doing saving for retirement. But really, at the level I needed to be saving for retirement, that didn't happen till I was in my 40s. So now I have this opportunity to tell these students who are 16, 17, 18 years old, you have this incredible opportunity that I don't have. You have this power. You have nothing but time on your side. I love that many of my colleagues will say the same thing. They really kicked it into gear when they got here. That's when their eyes were opened.
Can you share a little bit more about that? When we learn stuff, you can learn it, you can read about it, but when it really impacts is when it's happening in your life, whether, let's say, a mortgage. You can conceptually learn about a mortgage, and then you buy a home of some sort. And oh, now I understand what a mortgage is. And then you talked about you're in a position to teach it. So how do you see your students, and teaching it really shows, okay, now I can figure out where are the holes in my knowledge. Tell us how you see that come alive with your students who are young, who aren't necessarily experiencing all of this and maybe aren't in a position to teach.
I believe there is an absolute sweet spot in that teen years, 16, 17, 18. And if you think about it, when you're 16, 17, you may be working in your first part-time job. Your credit cards are right around the corner. Everything that we teach is relevant. And relevancy plays a critical role in getting a student's attention. But they haven't yet made mistakes. And so it's our opportunity to really get this into their hands before they've made any mistake. I'll share this story with you because this was such a powerful eye opener for me. So this would be 17 years ago. My daughter graduated from high school and she went off to college. And while she was in high school, she had a checking account and I was a co-signer on that account. And I was monitoring it and she was managing it just fine. Then she goes off to college and now her college is affiliated with a different bank. So she closes her account with our bank and opens a bank account with the bank of choice for this college. And it wasn't 2 weeks later, and I get this call, and I have a hysterical child who has said, Mom, you won't believe this. She had made these small purchases, 5 of them, and each one was for less than $5. But she didn't have the money in her checking account. And now she has an overdraft fee of $39 on each of these 5 items. And she's freaking out.
That's a lesson.
That is a lesson. I stay calm. Alex, it's going to be okay. First thing you're going to do is move the money from your savings account over to your checking account. You have the money there. 2, you're going to call the bank. You've not made this mistake before. They are very likely to waive all of these fees or at least some of these fees. And 3, honey, you're going to realize that you just learned the most valuable lesson. This isn't going to happen to you again. You're going to be monitoring your account and you're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. I'm telling you, I hung up the phone with her, and my first thought was, what about the students who are coming from an under-resourced family? Maybe they make that call to their mom or dad and they don't have the same experience I have. Maybe they're not even banked. Maybe they don't even know what to tell them. Maybe the student doesn't have that safety net in a savings account where they can move money over to the checking account. I looked into this, and what happens if you can't pay that off, the bank starts to charge interest on it.
Oh, yeah. You get compound interest in a way different way than you want.
That's the other side of compounding. And then if you continue to not be able to pay this off, you end up in the bad checks system. And now that goes out to all of the other banks, and nobody wants to work with you. And my thought was, this very innocent mistake that many young adults will make, and some of us not even young, other adults have made this mistake. And now this becomes potentially years of hardship for this young person. Take another step further and you think about this, and now every penny that they have to pay in interest, same is true for credit card debt or any debt, that's money that they're not saving and investing for their future. This becomes a very, very expensive mistake for a student who's under-resourced.
Those are really great lessons. Brenda, I appreciate what you were sharing about broadening your own understanding of personal finances when you made the move over to Secure Futures. I'm curious, what was your relationship with money before you started your job?
I started working at age 13. I worked as a babysitter and I worked in the kitchen at a summer camp that was near my home for a few years. And then later on, I think at 16 or 17, I became a cashier at a local grocery store. It's funny because something I used to do, and honestly, sometimes I still do this, is I would calculate how many hours I would have to work to pay for something that I wanted. I want a new pair of jeans, and they cost back then $20. Right now, it's a lot more for a pair of jeans. But if I was earning $2.65 an hour, that's what the minimum wage was then, I would have to work 7.5 hours to pay for those jeans. And that's how I made decisions about whether or not it was worth it to me. It was sort of ingrained into me to be thinking about needs versus wants and think about if I had the means to pay for something. I think watching my parents, while we didn't talk a lot about credit, I definitely got the impression that that was something that I needed to be careful with. I didn't really understand how it worked and how to manage it. As a young adult, I think about my marriage. My husband grew up in a wealthy family, and he was much more comfortable with debt and borrowing than I was. And we kind of had to find a medium place where we could both be comfortable.
How do you guys do that? Just out of curiosity, because that can be quite a dance.
It can be. It's funny because I talk to students about that all the time. Being able to have those conversations is so important. And we really had to work at it. And there were a lot of uncomfortable conversations and some disagreement. As young professionals, we did make the decision to invest everything we had in my husband's education. He did pursue a PhD. We cashed in our retirement. We basically took everything we had saved and invested it in that. And to some extent, that was an investment that paid off, but I don't think I went into that decision and that conversation with everything I needed to know to do that. And some of it, I think we both have some regrets about. I wish we hadn't taken our retirement money, because then you're starting over again later when you don't have as much time for that to work for you. We've had to do some pretty major catch up to get where we want to be.
At that time, you're making decisions based on the information that you had, and you're making the best decisions for each other and the family at that point.
Coming here, I have increased what I'm saving for retirement many times over in the last 19 years because of being here and having that so top of mind. I think as a young person, you kind of get into this mindset that you got plenty of time to deal with that later. While my husband was in that PhD program, we were struggling. Everything we had was invested in that. And I was working, trying to provide for the family and make sure that I had decent healthcare benefits and all of that. It was a lot of pressure and things were very tight, and we had to make some tough decisions. We were in Texas at that time, and whether or not we were traveling back home to Wisconsin. How often could we afford to do that? Our children were very young. They were 2 and 3 when we moved to Texas. They were in daycare, and it was a really tough time and a challenging time. And I think being able to have those conversations and make decisions together was really important for us. And like I said, oftentimes it was a negotiation. We know I'm the conservative one and he's the not so conservative one.
Do you still do the math to some degree of sort of the hours that it takes before you make, especially a bigger purchase? Do you do that math still?
I do. I will still do that. It just really helps you too to think about the value of something. How often do we hear about people who want to take advantage of this discounted item? So they put it on their credit card. And now you're paying interest on that and you've just erased the discount. What a great opportunity for us to share that with students and help them get launched on the right foot and with the information that they need to make those informed decisions.
How has your relationship and your conversations about money shifted as a result of being at Secure Futures in your personal life?
The story I shared earlier about my daughter and her checking account, my eyes have been opened to just how challenging it can be to deal with money when you're coming from an under-resourced community. I think that's number one for me, and how much we've leaned into prioritizing the work that we do with under-resourced students and making sure that we're giving them all the information and tools they need to feel empowered with their money. I'd love to share this story. Antonio is a young man that went through our Money Coach program when he was a senior in high school. That was 2019. And after graduation, Antonio had an opportunity at a really decent job at the post office. He wanted to take that job and he did take it, but the job was second shift and he could get there by bus. But when he got off work, there wasn't a bus. So he made the decision that he was going to buy a car so that he could take this job. And he knew he didn't have a great credit score because he was young and he didn't have an opportunity to build that credit score. And when he went to buy that car, he saw that the interest rate was pretty high and that he was going to be paying a lot of interest before he paid off this car. Then Antonio decided, I'm going to build a budget for the next year that will allow me to pay this car off in 1 year. And they're not going to get all of that interest from me. And he did that. He's the youngest person on his team at the post office. But because he did that and shared his story with his colleagues, he becomes the go-to guy for information about managing money. And all of his colleagues are coming to him for advice. That's what happens when someone feels empowered and understands how to manage money. It's just so powerful.
When folks aren't used to talking about money and they don't have the proclivity to engage in conversations, it can be difficult when you're teaching them things for them to actually absorb the lesson, in my experience, or at least my theory. So within Secure Futures, how do you guys address that? How do you get the engagement piece?
The program has evolved over 19 years. We do an education program. We also do a coaching program. It's really financial mentoring, and that's specifically designed for students who are under-resourced. The way that I think students respond to this and are engaged with this is by making it interactive and keeping it very relevant to them. For example, with our Money Sense program, which is purely financial education, a volunteer will go into a high school classroom They're teaching kids about budgeting and saving, understanding banking, understanding credit. We've developed a curriculum that allows them, one, to tell some of their personal stories, which I think is key to engaging teens. Two, we encourage them to share their mistakes. There is nothing that gets a kid's attention more than your willingness. I talk about bad decisions I made with credit cards and my daughter's experience with overdraft. And those are stories that you can see. If you just look at your audience, they're looking at you, they're raising their hand, they're asking questions, you know that you have them engaged. We've built in some other places too, where there's some activities that they do to make it more engaging as well. I think that we've landed on something that works really well with coaching. And here's why we do coaching. As we were looking at the outcomes of our education program, and we were collecting some data from students to look at what was the likelihood that they would actually go open a bank account or begin to save. Could we get kids who were already using check cashing stores to stop using them? And as we were evaluating that data, we found that students coming from an under-resourced community, while they were testing as well as other students and learning the information that was clear, they were not taking action at the same rate as other students. We didn't see as much behavioral change there. One of my colleagues at that time was an alumna of one of our local inner city high schools, and she just went and did a bunch of focus groups with teens. She came back after a couple of weeks of doing these focus groups, and she said, Brenda, I think I know what we need to do. They want mentoring. And we started to look for a program that we could bring to Milwaukee. And there was no one doing financial mentoring with teens. So we built a program from the ground up, and it has evolved over time, but we call it Money Coach. And the idea is that a student will work one-on-one with a financial mentor. We call them money coaches. They help that student take those foundational concepts like budgeting and saving and banking and put them into action in their own life. They also have an opportunity to earn, we call it a incentive. What happens is while they're in the program, as they're meeting milestones, they have an opportunity to earn this little bit of money. It's up to $350 per student. And what's so powerful about that, if you have no source of income, then everything that we're teaching is concept. It's just conceptual. But if you have money in your hands and you can start to put those concepts into action and start to develop habits, if we can make that a habit over the 11 weeks that that student is in Money Coach, now they can take it with them when they transition out of high school and into adulthood. And we're finding just phenomenal outcomes with this program.
I love how you guys got that engagement in there. Tell us, what's your next money conversation going to be and who's it going to be with?
I'm a Rotarian. I belong to the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. And at the Rotary Club, we have a scholarship program for first-gen college students. And I serve as a mentor. And my student is this beautiful, bright young woman who just completed her first year at Fayetteville State University and HBCU. We are going to be meeting in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about budgeting, building credit, and managing student loans. So it's so important to me that she feel that sense of empowerment when it comes to money. And I want her to see it as a tool and not a source of stress.
Oh, Brenda, what a great conversation and many conversations you're having. I really light up when you talk about coaching and mentorship. I just think that is the connective tissue. Oh, and talking about mistakes to normalize it because we all make them. Incredible. Would you share with our listeners, where's the best place for them to find you?
Please visit our website. It's SecureFutures.org. And you can learn about the work that we're doing. There's opportunities for volunteers if you're in the Milwaukee metro area. And we're always looking for people to support our work.
Thank you, Brenda. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you on Money Tales.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening. And leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Asperient. Go to Asperient.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@asperient.com. See you next time.